calling for these reforms to be enacted faster. Here's Anita McNaught with more from Cairo.
Well, it was a jarring note that has badly rattled the protest groups in Egypt here. A unit of military police moved on the 200 or so demonstrators who were remaining in Tahrir Square as curfew fell at midnight last night, and cleared them quite forcibly from the square using batons and, we are told by some of the people there, tasers and cattle prods. Now, the people are asking, what does this signify? Is this a crack in the military's heretofore benevolent facade, a new authoritarian procedures being applied now as tolerance for the protests beginning to ebb? Well, for some clues to this, a note appeared on the military's Facebook page later on, talking about the incident as being unintended and saying that none of the protesters, and a few of them were detained overnight, none of them would be prosecuted for being there. But it's put the protest groups on alert here that perhaps there may be a change in tone, a change in conduct by Egypt's military.
Iran says its nuclear program has suffered a setback. Fuel is being removed from the reactor at the Bushehr power plant for unspecified technical reasons. Iran's envoy to the UN nuclear agency says the request came from Russia, which built the plant and provides the fuel for it. But there's been speculation the plant was hit by a malicious computer virus known as Stuxnet. In November, Iran did confirm some of the computers at Bushehr were infected. Gunmen have attacked Iraq's biggest oil refinery, killing at least 2 workers and sparking a massive fire which has shut down the plant. It's part of the Baiji complex in northern Iraq. A team of gunmen infiltrated the refinery in the middle of the night, opening fire, laying bombs down. Then they fled before detonating the devices. The attack caused extensive damage, leaving the plant out of action for several weeks. Jane Araf with more now from the Iraqi capital, Baghdad.
This was a serious breach of security at one of Iraq's biggest oil installations. This time, it wasn't one of the pipelines or the oil fields, which is home to foreign investment. It's the biggest refinery in the country, the Baiji refinery north of Baghdad. According to officials there, gunmen infiltrated the facility at 4:30 this morning, spraying the place with gunfire after they left as they laid bombs in control rooms. Those bombs set off fires that have caused extensive damage to a large part of the refinery. One engineer was killed by smoke inhalation, another technician killed by gunfire as the gunmen went out shooting. He says they're assessing not only the damage to the refinery, but exactly how the security breach could have happened. The facility is protected by a unit attached to the Ministry of the Interior. He says they are trying to increase confidence among staff who are afraid to come back to work. But in the short term, it will lead to a shortage of gasoline, a shortage of kerosene, and certainly have an impact on the confidence of Iraqis that their government can keep these installations safe.
2 separate attacks have targeted civilians in Afghanistan. A suicide bomber struck at a sports event in the northern Faryab province on Saturday, killing 1 person and injuring 25 others. And in Khost province, in the east of the country, 9 people were killed when their car drove over a roadside bomb. Police say 4 children are among the dead there. Another US national has been arrested in Pakistan, this time for overstaying his visa. A court in Peshawar has ordered that Aaron DeHaven be jailed for 2 weeks for having no valid travel documents. Relations between the US and Pakistan, a bit of a war of words recently over the detention of a CIA contractor, Raymond Davis, that is, who goes on trial in March for the killing of 2 Pakistani men. He claims he acted in self-defense, but the US says Davis has diplomatic immunity. Engineers in New Zealand say at least 1/3 of the buildings in central Christchurch must be demolished and rebuilt after Tuesday's earthquake. The death toll there has now reached 145, more than 200 still missing. Search teams from 6 countries are helping local rescuers, but no survivors have been found since Wednesday. South Sudan will become the world's newest nation on July the 9th, and with it comes a daunting task of state building. Much of the south was destroyed during the country's decades-long civil war, and now officials say their first priority is job creation. Harun Mutasa with more from Juba.
18-year-old Gloria is gaining some much-needed skills. According to the United Nations, around 85% of adults in southern Sudan can't read or write. That's why this auto mechanics class could give Gloria the head start she's looking for.
Others are getting afraid because there are no jobs. If you have certificate, you will not get a job here in southern Sudan, but If you have the knowledge of doing such things, it will help you.
Many schools were destroyed during the Civil War. Juba Technical College is being rebuilt by Plan International, one of many non-governmental organizations working in the region. Southern Sudan will gain independence on the 9th of July. Job creation is one of many challenges facing this new nation. There are no unemployment figures, but officials say the number is far too high. Victoria is looking for anyone who can employ her as a social worker, but there are no vacancies.
You can see many people there looking for jobs and they are not getting anything to do. Yeah. Then some of them maybe they may think to go and do some other things like business, but it's very hard to start.
Officials hope to one day have a dynamic economy that will create jobs, but right now the resources simply aren't there.
The challenges are actually those connected with funds. So to counter this, people will have to sit down and try to plan better how to manage these finances.
But it's not just about creating jobs for those already in Southern Sudan. Officials say close to 400,000 Southerners still living up in the north plan to head back to the region, and some fear this will put more pressure on already stretched resources. Aid agencies say hundreds of thousands of people have returned in the last few months. Sustainable development is crucial for a people hoping independence will improve their lives by creating a steady stream of work. Harun Mutasa, AlJazeera, Juba, Southern Sudan.
Counting well underway now after historic elections in Ireland, and opinion polls suggest the main ruling party is heading for its worst ever defeat. 14 years in power, but many voters blame Fianna Fáil for its mishandling of the economic crisis. The party led the government through Ireland's boom years, which ended with a joint EU-IMF bailout. The opposition, Fine Gael, says it will try to renegotiate the terms of Ireland's debt. French Foreign Minister Michèle Alliot-Marie says she is fully committed to her job despite reports she's about to be sacked. Alliot-Marie has taken a public battering since taking a holiday in Tunisia during the country's popular uprising. She flew there in a plane belonging to a businessman with alleged ties to the ousted president Ben Ali. Russia's due to unveil the official mascot of the 2014 Winter Olympic Games later on Saturday. More than 24,000 ideas were whittled down to just 10 finalists. And one controversial candidate has proved particularly popular. However, he's been excluded from the list. Neve Barker in Moscow explains why.
It's the face Russia doesn't want you to see. A creature like no other. This is Zoich. Munching on a ski pole. Spinning Olympic rings for eyes. He's hardly the kind of mascot Russia wants representing the country. Still, unlike the other competition entrants, he's gained a massive cult following online.
It was meant to be an entirely public internet contest, but in the end, the Olympic Committee chose the finalists themselves, so the competition didn't really mean anything.
Zoich may have been deemed inappropriate by the Olympic Committee, but perhaps without even knowing it, he's become a symbol of the hopeless state of the country's political opposition. Yegor is currently working on a satirical cartoon based on President Medvedev called Captain Obvious, a reflection, says Yegor, on the president's policies.
The Olympics will be a major money spinner for Russia. Sports stores like this are already capitalizing on hosting the event, and branding is everything if the nation wants to recoup some of the billions spent on hosting the Olympics.
As for Zoich, well, he's got commercial plans of his own. Look out for T-shirts and other merchandise in the not-too-distant future. Neve Barker, AlJazeera, Moscow.
We're half past the hour on Al Jazeera, so these are the headlines. The Libyan capital bracing itself for fresh violence because residents are reporting the Gaddafi regime is arming civilians to try to quash any dissent. These are pictures showing damage in the capital after the latest fighting between Gaddafi loyalists and protesters. Up to 7 people killed on Friday when pro-Gaddafi militia opened fire on people rallying after Friday prayers. This is some new video from the eastern city of Al-Baida showing one of Muammar Gaddafi's palaces. Parts of it were destroyed during the unrest as protesters tried to take over the city and drive out the pro-Gaddafi forces. The palace had iron doors leading to underground tunnels which are said to extend for several kilometres. Meanwhile, the UN Security Council is due to meet again to firm up a draft resolution calling for sanctions against Gaddafi and his government. Turkey's Prime Minister, those criticised such sanctions, warning the Libyan people will suffer most. During a UN meeting late on Friday, Libya's ambassador denounced Gaddafi, who 3 days earlier he'd called his friend. An emotional speech, Mohamed Shahrian saying he could not believe the violence the leader was inflicting on his own people. Elsewhere in the region, Yemen's president facing growing pressure to resign, with some key tribal leaders announcing their support for the anti-government movement. They include members of the Hashid tribe, which is considered the country's most powerful. Its members hold several key government positions. In Egypt, the judicial committee that's changing the constitution has proposed cutting presidential terms to 4 years with a 2-term limit. The proposals will eventually be put to a national referendum. Meanwhile, Egypt's ruling military council has apologised after military police beat protesters during demonstrations in Cairo, also ordered the immediate release of all of those arrested on Friday night. Iraq's largest oil refinery has been attacked by a team of gunmen who killed at least 2 workers. The plant is part of the Beiji complex, about 250 kilometres north of Baghdad. The gunmen infiltrated the refinery in the middle of the night, opened fire, then fled before detonating their devices. And Iran says its nuclear program has suffered a setback. Fuel is being removed from the reactor at the Bushehr power plant for unspecified technical reasons. Iran's envoy to the UN nuclear agency, though, says the request came from Russia, which built the plant and provides the fuel rods for it. Once again, those are your headlines here on Al Jazeera. People in Power is next.
Hello everyone, this is People in Power and I'm Summer El-Shahad. On today's programme, Yemen's Pied Piper of Jihad.
Of Yemeni descent but American-born, cleric Anwar al-Awlaki is the first US citizen ever placed on his country's official assassination list. With his perfect English, Anwar al-Awlaki's internet sermons preach contempt for non-believers, or kuffar.
The important lesson to learn here is never, ever trust al-kuffar.
In recent weeks, Yemen has seen its fair share of the anti-government demonstrations sweeping across the Middle East.